We're in consumer math, lesson 3-11, open mutual funds. I might have been able to squeeze in closed mutual funds too. It could have been quicker, but maybe I'll save that for another day. I can maybe talk about open mutual funds and another topic at the same time. Wednesday, today's date, Wednesday, December 2nd, 2020. I've talked about mutual funds a bit. You probably have heard it in passing, like if you don't know what to do with your money, throw it in a mutual fund. And that's generally a good practice just because you don't have to worry about it. Someone else is managing your money for you, and they should hopefully be getting a decent return. I mean, at least the average stock market. If they're trying to beat the stock market, they probably will fail. That's just the way that the stock market typically works. So let's ask the obvious question. What is it? Or what are mutual funds? Mutual funds. In general, a mutual fund is just a giant amount of money. So I'll say it's a pool of money. A pool of money. Not necessarily like what is that guy? Donald Duck, not Donald Duck. What's that? Scrooge, that guy that like dives into his pool of like gold. It's not exactly like that. It's more like online banking, but still, it's a giant amount of money, where the purpose of that money is investors like yourself, the common man, woman, get to invest. Where investors invest in your typical thing. So stocks, bonds, etc. Like, and it's basically any asset. I'll just say, and other assets. The key here, I maybe I'll do this in red in the start. The key here, welcome back, Josie. Oh, she's not connected to audio. The key here is that this is a diversified and managed. It's diversified, which means that you have very, very low risk. Well, I mean, as low risk as possible, right? It's still the stock market. Nothing is secure whenever you're making stock market investments, not by the SEC at least, right? So it's diversified to minimize risk, and it's managed by someone else. So you give them money and you hope that they know what they're doing with it. Other things that you need to know about the basics of mutual funds is that it's run by a person or a group, but usually one person. It's run by what is known in the business as a money manager, by a money manager. So that's their title. They have like other titles too. You can, instead of money manager, you could have called them a portfolio manager. So I'll say maybe a portfolio manager. The main thing being, it's usually one person that is in charge of managing the portfolio. A portfolio is just a fancy way of saying, here is a giant list of the stocks, bonds, all the assets that are in my mutual fund. That's called my portfolio. So they will, they'll sell, trade. If you're going to go aggressively, you can do what's called a hedge fund, and they can like short things more often, stuff like that. But generally speaking, it's just a place where you throw money and they invest for you. And I'm hoping maybe if you're like, that sounds kind of fun, I want to go ahead and invest other people's money. And it does kind of sound pretty fun. I just don't know the career path of what do you study in college to do that. I think you just have to be rich and know rich people to be able to do this, but I don't know. So the cool thing about being a money manager is you typically make, if you look at your giant pool of money, you make between 0.5% to 2% of your portfolio. So if you're, it's called the net asset value, NAC, or NAV, can't spell. So 0.5 to 2% of your, I'll write down the full word and I'll just refer to it as NAV from here, net asset value, which is a fancy way of saying how much money do you got in your pool of money. So from now on, I'm just saying NAV. And that's every year. So if you have a ton of money in your net asset value, you might not make the 2% because it's such a large fund. You might make 0.5%, but it's a giant amount of money. And sometimes, and I don't know how often this is, but sometimes you can also get this additional performance fee. So you can have a performance fee, which in my opinion is a terrible idea because the market fluctuates so much that if the market goes down, obviously you as a money manager don't get any money. But if you do really well, which just typically means the stock market itself is doing well, you get between 10 and 20% of however much money you make for the people that are in your mutual fund. So you get between 10 and 20% of positive returns. And you might hear the term hedge fund. I don't think I'm going to ever have a full lesson on it because it's basically just a mutual fund. So my question is, what about hedge funds? It's still a mutual fund. So still is a mutual fund. But there are two key differences. First key difference is it's way more aggressive. So it's aggressive. You need to be thinking about Mr. Sindel losing a lot of money with my penny stocks. They don't do all penny stocks, but they're still diversified. It's still lower risk, but they're way more aggressive. And two, not everyone can join them. So you have to be an accredited investor. Accredited, I think that's how you spell it, investor. To join that mutual fund. So there's a few more hoops to jump through. Not everyone can do it. Okay, so we've talked about what it is. My next logical question is how does it work? Like if you, and I'm gonna think about who's in first place in the stock market game. Is it still Eder? So okay, Eder, you're so successful at the virtual stock market game. I think that you deserve to be, you can be a portfolio manager. So let's talk about Eder, the portfolio manager. How does Eder set up his corporation? So Eder's mutual fund.
Out of your mouth, whether you like it or not.
I'm gonna have to mute Josie because I don't know what she's doing back there. Okay. How does it work? And I should have talked about this before the lesson started, but because we're back on Zoom, I do need to start checking your notes. You need to start uploading notes again to those Google Slides. So when you're done with the notes today, you will be uploading them just to verify you are doing it. Okay, so Eder, you're going to set up a mutual fund. The awesome name that I have invented is Eder Incorporated. Eder Incorporated is a new mutual fund. How does this get off the ground? Well, there's a few things that you need to do, Eder. First, you need to have some of your own money to invest in your own mutual fund. So let's go ahead and let's make a square here. Let's say that this represents your net asset value, your pool of money, and you put in, I don't know, you want to put in $1,000? Let's put in $1,000. And you get to choose how many different shares you want. So let's go ahead and say, okay, that $1,000 is divided into 5 shares. So make 4 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4. They should have all been the same size because they're equal value. And so these are your shares. So how do you calculate the cost of your shares? It's your net asset value. So it's your NAV per share. And since there are currently 5 shares, 1,000 divided by 5 is 200. Each share now is worth this thing right here. If I just had to pull it off to the side and talk to him, this is a $200 share. So you have your mutual fund. You need to jump through a ton of hoops. I don't even know how many there are. I just know that
does that mean that you earn $2,200 or you have to pay $200?
That just means that $200 exists in a pool of money, and the way that you're kind of sectioning up your pool of money is every $200 is one section, one share of money. The reason that you want to section it off into pieces of shares is because you want people to be able to actually buy stuff, right? So the amount per share is going to dictate how many people buy.
Okay.
And I am super oversimplifying this. Usually you'll have thousands, tens of thousands of shares. You'll have maybe millions of dollars in your mutual fund. So Eder has to go to the SEC and get approved, and there's a lot of hoops involved. So let's go ahead and say you Eder, you get approval from the Securities and Exchange Commission. So I can't spell, Securities and Exchange Commission. I think there's 2 S's in commission, AKA the SEC. I've said SEC a bunch of times. I don't know if I ever actually define what that is. You know, those are the people that control the government organization that controls everything that has to do with investing, typically the stock market and stuff. That's controlled by the SEC. So you've jumped through a ton of hurdles, Eder. You sign all the paperwork away. They know you're legit. And they're like, okay, definitely you are not a Ponzi scheme, which that's Madoff. He was able to get through this, right? You're definitely not a Ponzi scheme. You are a legit mutual fund. What do you do next? So now you can advertise. You can say, hey, invest in me. So you advertise. I think that's with a Z. Advertise is an S. You advertise online or whatever. You're allowed to market yourself as a, hey, come invest in Eder Incorporated. I was first place in the high school stock market game. Like I know kind of what I'm doing. You can also now obviously people can give you money. And when I say people, I mean, I should be specific, kind of anyone. There's no limit to who can invest with you. Anyone can invest in you, and they're not investing in you. They're investing in Eder Incorporated, Okay, so how does that affect your diagram up here? So every night, it's usually at the end of each day, usually the close of the stock market, since a lot of the money is still invested in the stock market, but at the end of each day, you get to update your shares. So the price per share, this $200 is kind of a fixed amount. So even if more people invest, they'll buy like maybe 1 share. If they buy 1 share, that puts $200 into your pool, your net asset value. So you'll be up to $1,200. But now you have another share. So 1,200 divided by 6 is still $200. When people invest money or take money out, it does not affect the cost per share, your net asset value divided by share. This is basically a constant amount. The only thing that will make this $200 go up and down is if you do good or bad in your mutual fund. If you make good investments and you go up, then your cost per share can go up as well. And you, Eder, can now decide, okay, I want to add some more shares and kind of lower the stock or it's not the stock price, but you can control the price, but make sure that you do it mathematically sound so that people aren't just randomly losing money. So let's say, let's make a scenario. So our scenario, Eder, you did kind of okay, but and again, it's kind of cool because you're getting your 1%, let's say, of your $10,000 each year. So you're getting $100 a year to invest and play with that money. And hopefully you're not going to be one of those guys that asks for a performance fee. So we're going to assume you're just getting your normal commission. Let's go ahead and say, after your commission, after all of your diversification and stuff, you're actually now down to $900. So our new diagram, a year has passed. And this is, I'm way oversimplifying this. You want to be thinking, okay, well, obviously there's probably more investors and a bunch of other things that have happened. But let's go ahead and say you're now at $900. You've gone down 10%, which is unfortunate. That's a terrible thing to happen, but it happens. You still have those original 5 shares. So 4 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you still have those 5 shares. But now each of those shares is also gone down by 10%. So instead of being $200, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are still 5 of these, they're now worth $190. Why? Because it's $900 divided by the number of shares. 900 divided by 5 is 190. And let me just verify that. 900 divided by 5 is, I'm bad at math, 180. I'm so sorry. I felt something was off. There's too many 9s to make sense. $180, which means every single person that had a $200 share now has a $180 share. And hopefully in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this sounds like the stock market. This is exactly how the stock market works. And I agree. Yeah, you have shares. If the stock market does well, or if your mutual fund does well, it goes up. And if you do bad, it goes down. It's the exact same, except someone is managing this fund. So hopefully that person knows what they're doing. And when they're managing their fund, they get to choose how to diversify, and hopefully there should be less risk. You shouldn't just randomly lose 10%. This means that the portfolio, sorry, Eder, your Eder Incorporated in my scenario has not done well. You didn't diversify well enough. You lost 10%, or maybe there's the housing crisis that happened. And that, in essence, is a mutual fund. That's all I have for you guys today. Yeah, do you guys have any questions?
Wow.
So hopefully your takeaway today is, yeah, if you like trading stocks on your own, definitely go for a Roth IRA or some sort of retirement account. Definitely have a 501k. But if you have no idea what to do with your money and it's just sitting around and you know you want to invest it, just throw it into a mutual fund. Choose a mutual fund that has a good return. Remember, every mutual fund is like, I'm going to try to beat the stock market. Stock market averages 10% a year. I'm going to make 12% a year. It typically doesn't happen, but it's still a way to diversify your money so that if the stock market does go down, well, they have bonds and stuff. So you didn't lose a stock market amount. A safer way to invest your money that you shouldn't have to worry about. Cool. And that's it for today.